and they said, what we're doing is not sustainable, this is stupid. And we're all fighting over resources because there's too many people, right? So and this was actually a research paper that was written. And so the Japanese said, all right, we're going to train everybody to smoke. That's why everybody in Japan smokes. Population control, right? We said, well, hey, we're going to put fluoride in the water. Why do you think Bill Gates is vaccinating everybody in Africa? Population control. And they're trying to figure out right now how to get vaccines into water. They won't have to work real hard because we know that rabies is a killed vaccine so that animals don't poop out rabies and it doesn't mutate, which it does anyway because you're using genetically modified vaccines and nobody knows how they operate in the environment. I'll share a story about that. The rabies baits that they drop from the planes, they're not modified live. They're not modified live. I'm sorry, they're not killed. They're spliced with pox. With pox. That's why you need to wear gloves when you handle it. You don't get pox if you handle it with no gloves. So a lot of vaccines are genetically engineered now, a lot of the killed vaccines. So they splice two viruses together because you never want rabies to wake up in the host. That would be bad. That would be really, really bad. So they splice them together. But nobody's tested any vaccine in the field. We're just guinea pigs. It is all just experimental. Because nobody has done any type of higher level study that you need to do on safety, on vaccine safety and on vaccine efficacy. As a matter of fact, infant babies are not able to respond to vaccines until they're a year of age. Until they're a year of age. All right? All the vaccines just cause damage. So, one day they said, hey, in Africa, we want to protect the lions who are living in the Serengeti. All these village dogs are running around, and we really don't want these village dogs giving our lions rabies. We really want to protect the lions from rabies. So what they did was they took all the village dogs who'd never been vaccinated before, and they said, let's vaccinate all of these village dogs for rabies, and that's what they did. And immediately thereafter, the village dogs all got distemper. And the distemper mutated. And not only did it kill the village dogs, it killed all of the wild dogs in the Serengeti, and then it mutated again, and it started killing off the lions. So we know so little about how vaccines work in the field that it's laughable. We have no idea how vaccines work in real life. But we do know they're dangerous as snot. And here's a decision that you guys need to make, because I think there's the illusion that if you vaccinate your dog that you've protected him, and you haven't. You have only traded one risk in for another. If you don't vaccinate your dog, then he is more at risk for infectious diseases. He's more at risk for parvovirus. He's more at risk for distemper. Probably not rabies. It's just rabies is not a thing. Listen, if I lived in India, would I vaccinate my dogs for rabies? You bet I would. You bet I would. But here, no, I don't vaccinate my dogs for rabies. So if you don't vaccinate your dog, or if you don't vaccinate him for everything else and you only vaccinate him for rabies, whatever, then your dog's risk is infectious disease. If you choose to vaccinate your dog, then your dog's risk is cancer, allergies, autoimmune disease, all the things that vaccines cause, plus, when it comes to modified live vaccines, infectious disease. Because we already know that modified live vaccines can cause infectious disease. Vaccinated puppies get parvo all the time. But you have to choose which. Don't ever operate on the illusion. Life is deadly risky. Don't ever operate on the illusion that you can eliminate risk, because you can't. You just, when it comes to vaccine decisions, you just have to figure out which risk you can live with.
I think it has the state law for it.
Right.
Because now we're getting fined. I don't like my dogs to class, or I take them that they have to have that rabies shot or they can't go. But it is a state law, and I think they were even going door to door, asking if your dog has.
They use fear tactic here, that, the dog wardens are going to be coming around to your house, and you better have your rabies vaccine and your license, or you get a $300 fine.
I live off the grid, and I've got a big gate around my house. I literally do that for my dogs.
So, we're struggling with that, and I thought,
And the US is worse than Canada.
Yes.
I loved it when I lived in British Columbia and Nova Scotia, because those provinces actually, rabies isn't required. Loved it.
And wasn't your team or somebody that you were working with working on trying to change those laws? Because they know that rabies, like the antibodies are gonna last pretty much the entire lifetime.
And isn't that goes to Dr. Scholl's, he was doing the rabies
Yeah, the rabies.
challenge run,
Yeah.
or the rabies
Yeah.
runs?
Yep, and Chris Christine and Jean Dodds, yeah. What I don't love about that is, here's the thing. The whole thing that made me feel really, really icky about that was that research is already there. It's been done in Italy. Research is done in Italy, but it's from Italy. It's not trustworthy. It's from what? Because it's Italian. Like, there's researchers there. They know how to, they know how to structure a study. So the research is already there in Italy, but I felt a little bit icky about supporting this research, because in order to do this, they have to kill dogs, right? They have to do they need to be challenge studies, and they need to actually expose these dogs to rabies. So it makes me feel a little bit icky about that, especially when the research already exists. But, with rabies, listen, there's no science that says that rabies needs to be done every 3 years or every 1 year, but killed vaccines do not necessarily protect for life, and they often do need to be boosted. So if you're gonna vaccinate for rabies, get a booster done or run a really expensive titer test to see if your dog is protected. But just doing it once, you get all the damage and none of the benefit. But like for my dogs, I just don't do it at all. And I live in the country, and they're like exposed to wild animals, and I do worry about it from time to time, but I've been okay so far. But it's just, like Canada, we're pretty much rabies free. We're pretty much rabies free. Like, how do you get around the township? My husband got a really, really good job offer in the UK, and I said, yeah, I'm not going, because my dogs would need to be vaccinated for rabies, and they would need flea tick meds, and I just flat out refused, right? So, and I know that's not viable for everybody. I just keep my dogs away from people. I don't register them. I don't take them to vets who will rat me out. If that training class, listen, if I want to take my dog to a training class and they required vaccines, why would I give my money to idiots? Honestly, why would I do that? Because we owe it to everyone else. Listen, do we want change here? Do we want change?
Yes.
Then what are we doing about it? If we're saying, well, I have to vaccinate my dogs to take them to training class, or I have to vaccinate my dogs to take them to the groomers, you are doing nothing to change the world. You owe it to your dog and every other dog out there, and the people and the planet, to support the people who actually give a rat's crap about your dog. Right? So when a veterinarian, there's lots of people that go, well, I support this vet, he vaccinates every year, but he doesn't vaccinate my dogs every year. But if you support that veterinarian and you give him money, then you're saying, I endorse what you're doing, and I endorse it so strongly that I'm going to take money out of my pocket to give it to you. That's how strongly I endorse your practices. And every time we do that, it makes it harder for people like me and Tammy and everyone else in this room who's trying to make change in this world. It makes it harder for us to make change in this world. So please, do me a favor and really think about how and why and where you spend your money. A lot of, I'm pretty sure you can get your dog groomed here, and I'm assuming they don't need to be vaccinated.
That's correct.
For those people who don't have this in their neighborhood, I always say use a mobile groomer. They'll come to your home. Learn how to groom your dog yourself. Training classes, I just go in with guns blazing. It's just, you just develop this air of confidence where you just go in and you learn how to fake it over time. Crossing the border. I don't personally do this, but I've heard that, they're not looking for a vaccine, they're looking for a piece of paper, my friends. They're only looking for a piece of paper. Do you have friends with dogs who have that piece of paper? Right?
I gotcha.
It's just, it's our, if we, and if you don't, listen, everyone's different, and if you don't dig what I dig, and that's, you don't have to, everyone's different. Everyone has different priorities, everybody has different things in the world. But for somebody to spend an afternoon, like for 2 hours listening to me, I'm assuming that you're interested in this enough in this that you want to make some changes in this world. And it really is voting with your dollar is the easiest way to make changes. And that's why all these pet foods, have you realized in the last 5 years, just 5 years, how much pet foods have changed because of our demands, because of where we put our money? You know, don't think it doesn't change things,
Which
because
is
it does.
why DCM is an issue. Yeah.
Yeah, that whole DCM thing, and not because of grain-free food,
No.
you know that,
Right.
because of AFCO.
Most of these people are customers of ours, so they've already gotten that spiel, and I think
Yeah.
most, unless there's DCM questions, but I think everybody
Yeah.
pretty much understands that that's a scare tactic. But I want
I'm
to.
sorry, I just have one question.
Yeah.
Do you have any recipes for raw that we could follow or that you can offer? Because we don't have board, like, I don't know, I do, you know, chicken, turkey, and beef, and it's organic and grass fed, and I just, now I'm just thoroughly, from the dinner, with some stuff.
Yeah, I don't want to say this to depress you. Most people who would spend an afternoon with me are probably looking for more. You're already off to a really, really good start, and your dog is probably better off than 95% of the dogs out there, so I don't want you to feel
Your blood
like.
work comes back spot
Yeah,
on,
that's-
spot on. But I don't know if I'm adding the right things, vitamins, and probiotics.
Yeah, probably not. They'll survive.
Right, so.
And they'll survive.
What else, like, if I do answers, and we have done answers, is that complete, like, do I have to add anything, because I do the cow, or the cow's milk, the kefir stuff, I don't know.
I don't think commercial foods are complete, because most don't contain enough organ meats, and organ meats are nature's multivitamins. I'm really big on organ meats. And if you're buying a commercial food, try not to buy one with fish oil in it. We already talked about how fish oil goes rancid. You don't want frozen food with fish oil in it. You know, it's, where can you go? Like I said, this is something that we're gonna do at Raw Roundup, this year. And you know what, like, I should have had this organized, because every time I do a talk, like I find something like kind of free for you guys, or something. I don't really have any of those things, but I could probably swing you guys like some Raw Roundup deals and get you in for like super, super cheap. Because we're gonna go through that in Raw Roundup. So I'm actually gonna, so for Raw Roundup is like yeah. Yeah, so.
People were wondering what Raw Roundup was.
Yeah, I was just about to explain. So Raw Roundup is, this is our 6th year doing it. So we take an entire weekend, and all we do is we bring in vets and experts from around the world, and we talk about building better raw diets. We talk about the diet itself and supplements. And the one thing we talked about that we're going to do this year is we're going to take the GoPro and the dash cam, and we're going to actually go to the abattoir and buy a whole bunch of food and take it home and talk about the supplements and all that stuff as well. And I think that will help a lot of people.
What do you think about Stephen Brown and Dr. Becker's recipe?
I have a big disagreement with Steve all the time, and I think Dr. Becker makes raw food way more complicated than it needs to be, and it turns a whole lot of people off.
I don't think anybody can ever just get it completely.
I understand.
Well, here's my biggest problem, is that Steve Brown and Karen Becker both say foods must meet AFCO requirements. Okay? And it's a small group, what the hell. So, they came out to one of our things, one of our events. And we had Steve Brown and Karen Becker together, and they sat there and told all of our people that their raw diets would be deficient unless they gave them synthetic vitamins and minerals. And that was the last time they've done anything with us, because it's like, it's not my philosophy. It's just, I get, hey, I'm dog naturally, I get to decide. We have some bias, and I don't think it's healthy for people to say that a raw diet is deficient unless it has, specific things in it, right? So, but they're right in a way, because AFCO has done some research. So when it comes to linoleic acid, yes and no. So the way that they discovered how much linoleic acid, right, omega-6, should be in the dog's diet, is what they do is they feed the dog a purified diet. And so a purified diet is just basically lard and hydrolyzed protein. That's it. And then what they do is, if a dog doesn't have any linoleic acid, they develop devastating skin issues, lesions. It's the first essential fatty acid that they actually identified for dogs. Because back in the 70s, when they were adding a whole lot of corn to the dogs' kibbles, it was really, really low in linoleic acid, and dogs were getting skin diseases. So then they added it back in. So what they did was they took this purified diet, and then the dogs got terrible skin lesions, and then they said, okay, let's add linoleic acid back in the diet, and then we'll find the amount where they don't have these skin issues anymore. And that's how they determined how much linoleic acid should be in the diet. Now, there's a few problems with that. Animals living in a lab eating lard are not indicative of the nutritional needs of dogs eating real foods in the home. That's a challenge for starters. But there's a lot of other minerals where AFCO is just totally out in left field. An example of that is manganese. And that is one of the things that Steve Brown said, dogs do not get enough manganese. You have to supplement it in the diet. And I said, well, wait a minute. Let's look at how AFCO figured out how much manganese a dog needs. You want to know how? What they did was they looked at dog milk. They evaluated dog milk, and they said, okay, it's got this much manganese in it. Now, we know that heating, processing, and cooking destroys some nutrients, so we're going to take that amount and we're going to add 10% of it. That's the minimum required amounts of manganese. Does that sound scientific to you? Not even a little bit. So it is a very, very rough hypothesis on which to say the dog's diet is deficient unless it has that amount of manganese in it. It's ridiculous, in my opinion, to say that. AFCO does not have its crap together, and that's why we have DCM, because of all these novel ingredients that they don't have the definitions for, that they haven't looked into, and it's just AFCO not doing its job and not being able to keep up. So, to say that dogs need this because of AFCO, I think, is a mistake. And when I was doing the certification courses, I was doing them alongside Dr. Meg Smart, PhD. She actually wrote the first elective nutrition course for veterinarians. And so I find her very, very educated that way. And you know, whenever I asked her these kinds of questions, you know, the answers I would get was like, yeah, we don't know. Yeah, like a PhD. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know. But, you know, but when it comes to AFCO, it's just ridiculous. Vitamin E. Why do you think Answers puts vitamin E in their food? No. They don't even need it.
They don't even know.
It's the only way they can get AFCO approval. And why is Answers, who tries to do everything right, why are they adding vitamin E as opposed to a whole food source of vitamin E? Because that amount of vitamin E does not exist in nature. Okay? I told you how dangerous oxidation is. AFCO's job is to take foods that are going to sit in a bag for weeks, months, or years and make sure that they don't harm your dog. One of the best ways to do that is to make sure that it has a lot of vitamin E in it. So much that there is not a food in nature that will create that amount of vitamin E. It's only there not because your dog needs it, it's because the food is so pathetic and oxidized. Do you understand that? Now, AFCO does not have separate requirements for raw food, so unfortunately Answers and all the other raw food manufacturers have to put that amount of vitamin E in their food because of AFCO. It's not going to hurt your dog, but if you ask Billy or anyone else, Roxanne or any other raw food manufacturer, they'd say, yeah, we prefer it wasn't there. Right? But it's the only way they can say on their bag that it's approved for all life stages.
You
So,
would recommend a commercial raw food, would you have a brand?
I like, they're all going HPP now, right?
What was the question?
I like Answers, raw brands, yeah.
What was
If you had a commercial raw.
Yes, we do, but we're, Our selection is getting lower and lower, or shorter, you know, smaller and smaller because they are going HPP, so we're pulling
Yeah.
them off the shelves.
Yeah, unfortunately.
HPP is high pressurized pasteurization.
Yeah.
Is that because of all the recalls lately?
No.
It's, well, no.
No, it's not.
No, the recalls lately are because they're only pulling raw foods and testing them.
Yes. They're trying to come down on raw because they're seeing the benefits of a fresh whole foods diet versus kibble. So what they're gonna do, they're gonna create that scare tactic and go after the people that are doing good.
But let's be honest, they're also doing it because it's not sustainable. How can Purina fill up freezers full of raw food for the masses?
Oh, it's
They
too
can't.
expensive and then,
Too expensive to the planet. So honestly, I'm glad there aren't a whole lot of raw feeders
Right.
around. Because the cost to the planet would be astronomical. Like, it would be. So, you know, it is a catch-22, yeah. So unfortunately in the US, just a lot of them are pressured to do HPP because they just keep pulling them and saying, AFCO just keeps, not AFCO, but the FDA keeps pulling them and saying, oh, it's got bacteria, oh, it's got bacteria. It's supposed to have bacteria, it's food. And their tests are so sensitive, they catch bacteria that, there's so many species of salmonella, and most of them are, they don't hurt your dog at all, they're just there.
Right.
But it doesn't matter, it catches them all, you know, so it's just a witch hunt right now.
But is all the food that we get at the grocery store, if that's tested, it has bacteria as well? And we
Oh,
know
you have a
that.
higher chance.
Funny story, it's got more bacteria,
Yes.
so
Why
raw
are we allowed
food,
to handle that?
raw food is held to a higher standard than grocery store food.
It doesn't make sense. Why?
It's economics. Yeah, it's a dirty industry. I don't care about your dog.
You have more chances of getting salmonella from your chicken that you get from the grocery store than you do handling raw food.
Nylabone was recalled because of bacteria. And here's the thing, and kibble has bacteria on it. How many people would wash their hands after feeding their dog kibble as opposed to raw? Or Nylabone as opposed to raw? It's just like, don't be an idiot. And just wash your hands. Honestly, I don't wash my hands.
I don't wash my hands either. Not sometimes.
No.
It depends if it's stuck in my nails, yeah.
Yeah. Or if it just smells bad. Ugh.
Right, just leave it alone.
But, you know, sterile should never be the goal. Sterile should, and here's the thing, so with HPP, what they do is they take that raw food and they run it through this pressure. You know how the bends happen when divers are submerged? It's kind of the same pressure that they do with the raw food. And they go, oh, look, it just killed the pathogenic bacteria.